Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Okay, welcome to Think Big. Our guest today is Sam Tichnor. Sam, tell us where you are in the world geographically and what you do for a living.
Hey, so I am New York City based, and I run a snack brand called FFUPS.
Amazing. So where about in the city are you? I'm actually a New York native myself, grew up in Poughkeepsie. I spend a lot of time in the Upper East Side these days.
I'm in the Upper East Side.
Cool. Very nice. So yeah, tell us a little bit about, what inspired you to, take the big step from, maybe what was a concept or a problem you saw that maybe needed to be solved, or maybe a place in the market that wasn't really being, or somebody in the market who wasn't really being targeted. Walk me through a little bit, what your thought process was and what convinced you to really take the next step to actually come and found a brand.
Yeah, so I was in the emerging brand startup space for a while before I went off and ventured on my own thing. And my job previously was at Harry's, the shaving company, where my role was to figure out what were things that weren't shaving that we could expand the company's portfolio into. And so I kind of knew what interesting things were to look for new brands in the world, and kind of reached this point where, Harry's was supposed to have been acquired and the FTC decided to flex their muscles and block the deal. And then 1 month later, the pandemic started. So I was kind of in this place of, things were a little bit different. I was working from home. This big exit that was supposed to happen didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I knew that I wanted to kind of take my career matters into my own hands at that point. And so I started thinking what are the things that I would find interesting in a brand opportunity if I were to start one. And I think for me, it's always, is there a large set of consumers who have unmet needs? And are those unmet needs things that I'm able to address? So those were the two questions that I was thinking about. And for the brand I started, FFUPS, I think there were kind of two layers to what is the unmet need. I think first is that every new food and beverage brand is focusing on health claims or being better for you and going after these either kind of superfluous marketing claims or needs that don't actually matter to the vast majority of consumers. And to me, I thought it was interesting. It was okay, but what about consumers that don't care? 80% of people doesn't matter to them if the product has a health claim or not. They just want something that tastes good and kind of treats them with respect almost, or understands what their needs are and isn't trying to shove, a candy bar in a wrapper that says it's healthy. I think people are smart enough to know that that doesn't fly. So I thought that as a set of consumers was really interesting. And then the second piece was the fact that in the puff space, Cheetos has all the market share, but they're a cheese brand, not a puff brand. And by that, I mean that they are the puff brand. When you think of puffs or either the crunchy or the puffy ones, you think of Cheetos, they've got their classic cheddar mix, they've got cheddar jalapeno, they have flamin' hot, they have Cheetos on popcorn, Cheetos on pretzels, Cheetos mac and cheese. They're cheese. That's what they're, that's their thing. What if there was a brand that had non-cheese flavors on the puff? And you actually see that in the better for you space. But if you walk down a conventional snack aisle or go into a mainstream convenience store, you're not actually seeing anything beyond cheese flavored puffs. So I thought those two things combined, the not going after health claims and putting other flavors on a puff, I thought that was a really compelling unmet need in the category. So I felt really good about that, did a bunch of research. And then the second was am I qualified to actually go and launch that brand? And I think the answer is yes. I had enough experience through nearly 6 years, kind of just in various roles at Harry's, to know here's the things that it would take to go from zero to having a brand in the world. And so those two things combined, I was I'm ready to go for it. And so started working on the brand in, I guess, late 2020, spent 2021 working on product, working on branding, all the kind of pre-launch stuff, while kind of spending half my time doing that, half my time consulting with other brands, which is something I'd highly recommend to anyone looking to start their own thing. And then we launched about 2 years ago. We've been largely bootstrapped. Have taken some, small outside friends and family and certain VC checks, over the last couple of years. But I view us as like a self-funded bootstrap brand, and we're just starting to hit our stride and have a really good expansion plan into convenience stores for this year.
That's awesome. And what would you say, like two or three of the big things were that you took from your past experience at Harry's and elsewhere you felt helped you like really start with like the inception of the brand and carve out a market for this thing?
Yeah, I think it's look at what the market is doing and find pieces where the way that existing brands are messaging to consumers are kind of like missing the mark. So for Harry's, it was the insight that Gillette is kind of messaging to customers that like, oh, this is some high tech like spaceman, and like, these ripped guys are just shaving. And for Harry's, it was, well, what if we just kind of position around more of like, just like a regular everyday guy shape, like more attainable, more relatable. And so for me, that was again like what do people actually want, and show them that. Doesn't necessarily have to be aspirational. It just has to be like saying, hey, these are just tasty puffs on the packaging. Like our new packaging says just yummy puffs on it. Like that puts a smile on someone's face and gets them excited. And then I think the other takeaway I had was, and this is when I was on the FP&A team at Harry's, we always had this like marketing budget that we just call like the cool stuff budget, which is, I think, very important because especially in the DTC world, which like I wouldn't say FFUPS is really a part of, we're really more of a retail brand, but there's such an obsession over measuring and attribution and all this and all that. And I think what gets lost is the fact that sometimes you just have to do cool stuff, knowing that there's not going to be a payback, and just like you just live with it and be okay with it. And I thought Harry's, I think they still do, but especially like earlier days, did a really good job of like separating that out and making sure that like, and of course, as like the finance guy in the room, I would say, oh, but we need to assume something from it. And one of my takeaways was like, no, you don't, like, just let that be. And that's a separate budget. And so that was another kind of big takeaway for me of just like, as I was thinking about the brand and what we were doing, it was always like, what's cool stuff that we can do that might not be measurable, but we should do anyways. And some of that is packaging design. Some of it is having a website that's almost like user unfriendly just because it's a fun website. And so it's like all those types of things, I think would be my biggest takeaways.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, I love the website. I was scrolling through it, trying to see like all the flavors and stuff, and I see the little like dress meat guy. So
yeah,
funny.
exactly. Like right now, like admittedly, like, the website's a little messy. I've been focusing more on just like selling into stores, and I'm like due for a refresh. I haven't really touched it since we launched, but yeah, like the kind of like dress up a FUP element to the website, like that doesn't drive anything beyond getting people to spend time on the website and just getting people to like the brand. Because the reality is like people aren't looking to buy junk food on the internet from a brand's website that they've never heard of. And if we can just do something on the website to at least build brand affinity, so that by the time we're in a store near them, they're like, oh, I remember this brand. This was like the funny brand that had me dressed the puff on the website. Like that could be enough like to get them to actually buy. Like they always say, like it takes 7 impressions for someone to have enough purchase consideration to make a purchase. Well, if the brand is interesting enough, maybe you can shrink that down to 4 or 5. And so that's kind of the bet with the website.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see, yeah, I know you mentioned FFUPS is more of a retail brand. I see you do still online though as well. I see you have like 100 or something stores in New York, a few in, it looks like Arizona and California, which is awesome. So what would you say is kind of the breakdown revenue wise, between what you're doing on like in e-commerce through the website and direct to consumer sales versus what you're doing in retail?
Yeah, like year 1 was probably 50-50. I think year 2, I pulled back on investment in DTC almost entirely and really was focusing on, getting our single serve bags ready to go, making some tweaks across the supply chain while serving just existing customers and kind of just trying to like tread water as we were making some changes, and probably ended up being like 85% retail, 15% online. And then this year, I'm pushing to be like 95% retail.
That's awesome. So I see you've kind of expanded from obviously based in New York, so most of them are going to be there. What got you interested in doing the specific markets that you did as far as local stores, or was it just kind of circumstantial between like Arizona, California? I think what was the other? Washington, right?
Yeah, circumstantial. We got some in Oregon and just like maybe 1 or 2 in Texas. I probably should update my store tracker. That's a good reminder.
I think it's pretty close. I think it might just not have Texas, but the rest seemed like pretty full.
Yeah, I think some of it is just like inbound interest. I'm not going to say no if somebody wants me in their store. There's definitely like a list of influential small independent stores that will take like a drop shipment from a brand. And
gotcha.
I'm kind of just working through that. But yeah, our bread and butter right now is kind of like the DC metro area, New York, and up through Boston, because that's where we have a distributor that serves us. In the coming months, as certain shelves start to reset and as we build out distributor relationships, that is going to expand. So like we've got some distribution in the Great Lakes area that we're working on. We have like a distributor that we'll be working with, and just, that first delivery is in a couple months. We've got another in the Southeast. So it's trying to like build from New York, which is an expensive market to build in, very competitive.
Oh yeah.
And try to like, I think it's my backyard. So it's like, it's very easier. I think it is a little bit easier for me to just be in accounts and kind of deal with that. But knowing that, I think a lot of our success might be seen outside of New York.
Right. No, that's awesome. So I'm curious, like what, I know you said, I think in 2020, maybe 2021, you kind of made a shift from doing like almost 50-50 at the inception to like the first year you kind of stopped investing so much in D2C and doing more retail. You were like 85-15. What kind of caused you to make that decision? Like what kind of numbers were you seeing? What kind of things were going on for you that made you decide that the direct to consumer effort maybe wasn't as worth it as it was in the beginning?
Yeah. So strong product reviews, low retention rate. I was confused by that. Usually if you're getting like 4.5 to 5 stars on your product, that see people coming back, and we weren't seeing that. And we had some hypotheses as to why, which is it's not the natural buying behavior for the customers that we're going after. And we did some customer survey work and some interviews to confirm that, where there were people who be like, oh, I bought your try them all flavor sampler and I really liked it, but I don't have room for 5 bags of a puff in my pantry. Like that's a lot, especially for people who are in the city or a little bit younger. And the common refrain was, if I see them in the store, I definitely buy a bag again. But there's a threshold for me to want to pantry load and have a ton of product. And it just, it wasn't the buying behavior that, was normal for them in the context of salty snacks. Right. So that alone, and that given the cost of getting some of these customers was high, like we would have needed 2 or 3 orders to pay back. And so if we weren't seeing that, then, it felt nice to see like a growing revenue chart every month, but at what cost, right? Like
exactly.
Just because like a chart made me feel good inside doesn't mean that is the right business decision. And we're not one of those brands that raised millions of dollars of venture capital before we launched. So it's not like I had, VC money to light on fire, like it's my savings. So, had to be a little bit smarter and thriftier and scrappier with it. And so made that decision to say like, for us, it makes sense. We're a kind of low price, high moving item, and we need to be in the stores where people are looking to both, one, discover a new snack, and 2, like they'll come back and it will be part of their rotation, where like every 2 or 3 weeks, they might buy 1 bag. And if we get them once and they like the snack, then we could have them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just curious, like I know you said, your customer acquisition cost for the direct to consumer was kind of high. What was kind of driving that cost so high that it was, seemingly, almost not worth it to even, do that anymore?
Yeah, I think it was like the wrong offer. Like, and we've actually done some tests where like I do say like 95 retail, 5% e-commerce. Like there's pathways towards that changing. We recently ran a test where it was we'll ship you a bag for free offer, which like, of course people are going to take to that. But like the CAC on that was like 50 cents. So I was like, oh, that's within a day I went through the entire budget I had for the campaign. And again, like it's things like we're seeing a lot of 5-star reviews come in from that. There's a lot, like everyone gets added to our email list. So it's almost worth it from that regard. And we're getting product in hands. But again, are they coming back to buy it online for a second time? Like some people did, but again, like they actually need to probably do some website work. Like they would come back and buy 1 bag. I'm like, well, that's like not actually what I want.
Yeah, right.
And so that's like one option. We do have now single serve bags, and that's a little bit more in line with someone who would buy online, is someone who's looking to get like a variety pack. And maybe it's, you've got a family, and so you actually do have more storage space for snacks. And so we just released our single serve last month and starting to work through like what the offer could be for that, which could be something like, a 4-pack, 1 of each flavor we have available in the small size, just pay shipping. So reality is it's 4 bags for $5, which is still a good deal. It's not free, but like we could just do that classic like free trial, just pay shipping. And then that customer might be more likely to come back and buy more of the smaller. So it's like those are the types of things we're tweaking, and I think there can be success success, at least acquiring customers efficiently online that way.
Mhm.
And then the question is, will they come back? And if they do, like, how much are they going to buy? Or are we just comfortable using that as a email acquisition cost and then push people to store?
Right. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, and it's pretty. I say that's pretty on brand with a lot of the other folks that I speak to that do similar products to this. It's mostly retail, and just kind of use the website. So I mean, some have good. There's a few of the brands I've spoken to that have like a really serious social media following, and I would say, but usually requires a really strong social media following. And I would say most of the e-commerce sales that I hear about with brands like yours is people who do those variety packs. So that's something where I've seen repeated success in stories from other folks that I've spoken to. I think people are more apt to try something like that, and like in order to buy in bulk or something that would make sense to order online, as long as you're getting a variety of things, not just like 10 bags with the exact same flavor of the same product.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And the customers I do see coming back time and time again are buying, like, it's either they're buying like a variety pack over and over, or they're the type of customer who, like, we might have like a 10-20% off deal and they'll spend like $200.
Mm.
And they'll just load up, which to me, I'm like, that's great. You're buying a lot and you're getting slightly worse than wholesale pricing, but still works for me. So there's definitely like, there's something about like the customer looking to buy in bulk that is willing to buy online. But for, I think, our everyday consumer we're going after, like, I would guess that most of them are more comfortable just like throwing it in their cart. Because then, like, it gets to the purchase decision of, if you're buying a snack from a branded website, that's the thing you're buying, the bar's a little bit higher. If you're strolling down the aisle, you've got your cart, you're spending $150 at the grocery store, see a bag of FFUPS for $4.50, like, oh, this is interesting, a salted vinegar puff, I've never had that, throw it in. Like, the kind of bar for like satisfaction is a little bit lower, in which case, like, I always like to set expectations low and then surprise people, versus having someone be like, oh, I ordered the thing, the anticipation of it coming in 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh, I thought I would like this flavor on a puff, but I didn't, but I love this flavor more. So, like, I had one person just give like a not so favorable review, but then I read the review and they were just like, oh, I don't like cinnamon flavored thing. Okay. But like, that's in the variety pack. So like,
Right.
if you don't like that flavor and you bought it and you're going to ding us for that, that's fine. Like, that is what it is. But would you have bought that if it wasn't in the variety pack? Probably.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too. When you think about selling it through retail, so you do doing it online. One, like you say, like you do get that like anticipation. I feel like people are probably a little bit more critical of something they've waited for in the mail. But I feel like you also miss that. Even if it's only 2 to 3 day shipping, like you kind of miss that like impulsive behavior that I think a lot of folks exhibit when they are grocery shopping. Everybody goes with their list. They come home with twice the amount of things you went with the list, right? Yeah, that's really interesting. So say we were to speak again, in 2025. Like, tell me about your growth projections coming into this year. How the growth has been the past few years, and if this year you're projecting kind of similar, more or less.
Yeah, like, I think growth is often a function of just the capital you have available to invest. And for us, like, what I want to do is just limit our cash conversion cycle to be as quick as possible. I think benefit is, like, we do have low MOQs, which helps. I think, in the past, we've been more in that like low six figures per year. And I think, with our investment in switching to single serve and focusing on retail, like, we were like relatively flat from year one to year two. Which, it's not where you want to be, but that's where we were. And I think this year, starting year three, I'm pretty excited about, what our pipeline is looking like. And so I'm hoping, by the end of this year, we'll cross the $1 million run rate. And by like this time next year, we'll be in hopefully like a couple thousand C stores and, looking at some conventional grocery and really just, building out and into being a regional powerhouse. And so like I'd hope that by this time next year, like I'm not working in a closet as an office, like it's an office, but it's like one of those like, like 50 square feet, we work knockoffs and
like alcove type.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean. Yeah.
Goal is like, I think, there's only so much one person can do. And so I think it's, have more dedicated resources, helping grow the brand, get wider spread distribution.
Yeah.
See healthy, turns on shelf and just continue to grow from there and just, keep the ball rolling is kind of the goal.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really interesting at the beginning of the call. You mentioned this kind of like perspective of like almost like an anti-trend, where like every new thing that's exciting, that's kind of like breaking into these like very true and many times very traditionally marketed things like the Cheetos and like even like pickles and things like that. It's just like boring in the aisles. It's been the same forever. It's like the same two brands only sell that stuff. And it feels like all the new things are like alternatives, but like they go so far to the alternative realm where it's like there's like 9 different things you have to sign up for before you decide like that's what I want. It's like it's wheat free, it's gluten free, it's all this other stuff, which one can drive the cost up, but also not everybody is into that. Not everybody wants that. And some people, like you say, like the masses want alternatives as well that aren't necessarily looking for something that's vegan or dairy free or anything like that. You're probably not surprised to hear this, but it's very rare that I hear like that kind of perspective on marketing for things like this that compete with very traditionally marketed like huge box store things like this. So that's very, very interesting.
It makes it harder, which I think is long term a good thing. Short term, like the playbook that everybody's following, like I'm not doing do DTC and then get into Erewhon and then Sprouts and then Whole Foods. Those are all stores that, number one, they wouldn't take us. Number two, like our customers not shopping there anyway. So like respect what they're doing, but not for me. And like I think the only saving grace is like I look at brands like Liquid Death, and I would want to say like the most valuable new brand that's been founded in the last 5 or 6 years. And they're just water in a can.
Yeah, it's so funny. I hear that so often from some of the pods and interviews I do. So many people cite Liquid Death, and sometimes in small part, sometimes in like very large part, taking on like the things that they did with their mark and how successful they were and how much that resonated with people. So that's really funny. It's a very common thing I hear, but it's so true. Like they did something that has created a script for a lot of new brands and continues to be successful. So
and even them in their early days, like they faced challenges of like stores were a little hesitant to put them on shelf because it's controversial to a certain degree. I think I think consumers have to be in on the joke, which they are, and I think that's just the same thing. Like our brand is FFUPS, but some people might call it FFUPS, and that's part of the brand. That's part of the joke of like it's just a silly little snack brand. So that's like originally when we launched, we put "not healthy" directly on our packaging. Like it's just a little bit weird and out there, and I think it's necessary. Like you have to stand out. You have to, if you're not, I guess, causing someone to have a reaction, then people are just going to breeze right by you. Even if 2 in 10 people see our packaging, they're like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen," and they buy it, and 5 in 10 people are like, "I can't believe this. Like this is awful," and 3 people are indifferent. Well, those 2 people, they're going to really like us, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to buy it over and over again. And so if 20% of the people are buying my snack, that's cool. Like I'm good with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of my favorite questions I always love to ask, in you since 2020, right, was the inception of FFUPS?
Yeah, that's at least when like I started working on it.
Gotcha. So if you could go back, to 2020 at the inception of the company, knowing everything you know now about, running your own shop, what would be, if you had to pick one thing, what would you think would be your biggest piece of advice you could give to yourself back in 2020 when you were just starting the company again?
Don't do it. I'm just kidding. I think it's harder than you think, and it's going to be more capital intensive than you think. So don't rush big decisions, especially when it comes to timing. And like as a sub kind of point to that, nobody cares when you launch your brand. Make sure that you're not launching for the sake of launching. Make sure that you're a little bit more buttoned up. It's better to launch 5 months late than 5 months early. At least when it comes to it for this product. I think if you're talking about trendy brands and trying to catch the trend,
seasonal things.
For me, like I wish I spent more time thinking about channel strategy a little bit more. I was kind of laser focused on just launch online, and that was that. Versus understanding, and that was part of like that was the world I came from. I came from probably one of the most successful DTC CPG companies of all time that then had a really strong pivot into retail. And so that was not clouding my judgment, but that was just what I knew. So I thought I could replicate that. If I could do it all over again, I would do exactly what I'm doing now, which is smaller bags, launch in C-stores. That could have been my go-to-market strategy from day one. And now we're on, day 700, and that's our go-to-market strategy. And so it took a lot of lessons learned to get there, and I would love to have short circuited that lessons learned cycle.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's great practical advice. I think we have a lot of the young entrepreneurs or even seasoned entrepreneurs listening. Maybe I'll open a new venture kind of like yours. You have a lot of experience in the startup space and growing a business and a brand. Maybe you're pivoting into something they didn't expect. So I think that's really good advice. I think that's really valuable for people to hear. So yeah, that's awesome, man. So last thing, I just want to give you an opportunity to be able to shout out the website, let people know around the New York area. Maybe they know you, maybe they listen to the pod. Let them know where you are in stores, things like that. Anything else you want to shout out, links, yourself, to be able to follow the company, stay in touch with you guys?
Yeah, sure. So we're on Instagram at FFUPS. I post on LinkedIn a lot just about the journey. So you can find me at Sam Tichnor. In terms of where to find FFUPS.com, Amazon, like anything on the internet, we're probably available. And then if you're in the New York area, we're in probably at this point a couple hundred bodegas. We're at Citarella. We're at a couple West Side markets. So you see us on shelf, please grab one, maybe 2 bags, try a couple flavors. And more importantly, like if you do try it, let us know how you like it. And tag us, send me pictures, whatever. Love to see us on shelf.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, Sam. Well, I really appreciate your time, brother. Thanks for hopping on with us. And we'll definitely be in touch. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Sam.